The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yes. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Friday, June 6th. And today is D-Day, everybody. So shout out to, much love to everyone, all the fighters that were involved in D-Day, and much love to the families that lost loved ones in that. It's also National Eyewear Day today, you guys. Yeah, shout out. Look at that, Dr. Mark. I see it, buddy. I see it. I see it. I see it. It's also National Higher Education Day, Dr. Mark.
Oh.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's a good thing.
Yes.
I'm all about higher education.
The Dr.
Me
Mark
too.
Day today?
Yeah. It's also National Doughnut Day.
Ooh, it's National Doughnut Day. Maybe we gotta go get donuts today.
Yeah. See. Yeah. Don't cut it too short, Jesse, because it's also National Applesauce Cake Day.
Ooh, we can get applesauce cake donuts.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
That sounds fire.
It's also National Drive-In Movie Day.
Okay. I mean, have you been to the drive-in? I've been in the drive-in.
Yeah, I went to the drive-in as a kid.
Yeah, there was
I miss
one
the
like
drive-in.
maybe an hour away from us, so we went a couple times just for the novelty of going.
They still have it. Where the one place that I used to go as a kid, they still have it operational over in Concord. It's like a flea market on the weekends, and it's a drive-in at night.
Damn, it hadn't fallen down yet. You're old.
It's still there, Jenny.
Shit.
Still there. Mm-hmm.
They built that thing for tough, Jason.
They did.
Where is that, Jason?
It's in Concord, California.
They're very few and far between. Although they did make a comeback during the pandemic.
Yep. It's all, Dr. Mark, you're gonna love this. It's National Gardening Exercise Day. Gardening Exercise Day. So that means you got to lift your water bucket up 10 times every time you pour it.
Okay, why do I like that?
Because Jason,
because you're in Vermont and you like to be outside, outdoors, Dr. Mark. And gardening is a great outdoor activity, and it's so green and lush out there.
I see Dr. Mark is more of like a Dead albums on that big back patio overlooking the lake kind of outdoors. But, what do I know?
I have one for all of your emotions, Jenny Beth.
Oh, great.
It's National Yo-Yo Day.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I used to be good at the yo-yo. I could walk the dog and do the cat in the cradle and all the things.
Mm-hmm. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms, you guys. And we are going to kick this thing off today with Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's feeling much better today, it looks like and sounds like. And she's the founder of Kind Cannabis and of Justice Served, a 501c3 that helps justice-impaired individuals get their lives back on track. Just like she's back on track today. That's right, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
I am back on track. Happy Casual Friday, you guys. I did my hair and makeup, and I'm like, you know what? I want to be comfy for the show today. So I sat back down in bed. But I am wearing pants. So there's that.
You totally ruined the whole vision for everybody watching right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that kind of show.
You totally rained on all their parades,
but are
Jenny.
you going commando under the pants?
Oh boy.
Also no.
Okay, there you go. Get it out of your head, people.
You're ruining it for all the dudes in the audience, Jenny.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, at least you guys are in my bed.
And women, come on now.
You're welcome.
Use your pronouns properly.
Oh, with pronouns. Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, no. My pronouns are shut and the fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I wanted to update you guys. Yesterday, I reported on Minnesota having their first lottery and actually getting ready to issue some licenses to some people after all this back and forth and all this time. I tried to find a good article that complemented that one for today to update you guys. I couldn't find one, so I wrote you one. So, here. On June 5th, 2025, Minnesota marked a significant milestone in its journey towards a regulated cannabis market by awarding 249 business licenses through its inaugural cannabis license lottery. This event, overseen by the state's Office of Cannabis Management, represents a pivotal step in establishing a legal framework for cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, and retail operations within the state. The lottery process was designed to distribute licenses across 4 key categories: cultivator, manufacturer, meso-business, a combination of cultivation, manufacturing, and retail, and a retailer. Out of 776 qualified applicants, 249 were selected to advance in the licensing process. Notably, a significant portion of these licensees were allocated to social equity applicants, individuals from communities disproportionately affected by previous cannabis prohibition laws, including veterans and residents of high-poverty areas, which is awesome. The announcement brought a mix of emotions among applicants. Nick Ron, a veteran and owner of Warriors Garden in St. Paul, expressed his elation upon receiving a retailer license. He plans to expand his operations and continue supporting his nonprofit Warriors Next Adventure, which aids veterans dealing with PTSD. Similarly, Abby Johnson, who owns hemp retail stores in Lakeville and Dundas, secured a retailer license. She aims to incorporate cannabis products into her existing business by September, highlighting the opportunities the new market presents for entrepreneurs. While the lottery winners have cleared a significant hurdle, they must now complete several requirements before commencing operations. These include passing criminal background checks, securing business locations, obtaining local government approval, and undergoing inspections by the OCM. Additionally, licensees must enter into labor peace agreements with qualifying unions. The timeline for opening dispensaries will largely depend on how swiftly these steps are completed. Some, like Rand, are optimistic about launching by August 1st, while others anticipate opening in early 2026. For those who did not secure licenses in this round, there remains hope. The OCM has announced a second lottery scheduled for July 22nd, which will include remaining social equity applicants and general applicants for retailer licenses. Minnesota's approach to cannabis legalization emphasizes equity and community involvement. As the state continues to build its legal cannabis market, these initial steps are the groundwork for the system that seeks to rectify past injustices and foster economic opportunities across diverse communities. So, super stoked to see a lot of social equity applicants get selected. I think this is great. I don't think that applicants that are just social equity should be the only one going through lottery and everyone else can just get a license. I do caution Mr. Rand, like, August 1st is 2 months away, and, not that I have any experience, but oh shit, I do have a whole company that does this. State governments don't always move as fast as you'd like them to through the permitting process. So August 1st is a hefty goal unless you're built out and ready to submit everything today. I would say maybe push that back just a little bit. But if you get out there by August 1st, far be it for me. But congratulations to all the people who were selected. I'm anxious to see. I'm pretty sure my next follow-up will be writing about somebody who's stomping their feet because they didn't get the lawsuit that is to follow. But congratulations to Minnesota on completing your first round of licensing lotteries, and congratulations to the first folks.
Well, how many winners did they announce yesterday, Jenny?
249.
Wow, that's great. 249. Why not 250? Did they forget one?
I don't know. That's strange. I'm not sure exactly what happened
right?
there.
It's a weird number,
Because
right?
I believe with the story I reported yesterday, it was supposed to be 250, but I'll follow up.
Maybe there was a tie for last, and they're trying to figure out who's going to break that tie.
Maybe.
What do you think, Jesse? You think two balls popped out of the lottery machine at the same time on the last
Minnesota,
run?
if you need help getting through your licensing process, call me. What I do?
Gwen says your hair looks fire, Jenny Beth.
Thank you, Gwen.
Minnesota. I mean, this is the state also at the same time too that they've also allowed the reservations to open up dispensaries outside of the reservation that would fall under the jurisdiction of their Office of Cannabis Management up there, and it's also the same state that has put such a big priority on the hemp beverage industry of allowing all these beverage makers to be able to just sell their products pretty much in every single convenience store across the state.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about all this, Dr. Mark?
I'm on mute.
Yeah, we hear you now, buddy.
Okay, now.
We can hear you now.
I mean, some people really like beverages, Jason, and they have that fast acting nanoemulsion in there so you could, feel them. And you only need a few milligrams to move your THC needle.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a bunch of things working for it. And the other thing is that, Big Beverage has already got the distribution and manufacturing networks. Just adding THC is just another ingredient to their beverage production.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. What do you got to say? Oh, go ahead, please, Dr. Morgan. I'm sorry.
I was just going to finish by just saying, that's why it's an easy play for Big Beverage, because they're already doing this. That just adding THC as an ingredient is just kind of like a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Jesse, you have any final thoughts on this?
I just think it seems like Minnesota across the board is doing a lot of good things policy-wise in the weed industry, and they're fixing to be a leader, it looks like. Interesting. Time will tell. I'm sure they're going to screw it up somehow or another, and I'm sure that they probably already have. They're definitely beating California, I'll tell you that much.
Fair enough. I mean, but at the same time, it doesn't take much to beat California. I mean, there is some good news in California. They did postpone the excise tax for a while that was supposed to get raised. So that is some good news. And on that good news,
was good news.
Yeah, on that good news, we are going to roll into our first commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where am I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Test it. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Yes, and we are back, you guys. Anthony, I have to re-log into the thing.
Coming up next, after 300 push-ups.
Oh, yeah, that's right, girl.
A lot of complaining.
Stop it. I don't complain.
Well, you do if your toes get cold. The highest Republican, our head honcho, Jason Beck.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday today, you guys. We finally made it to Friday. We had some great entertainment yesterday.
You do get mad if your toes are cold.
Fair enough. But let me tell you something, man. I have some bad news today. Some bad news. And just so you know, I think this is total bullshit, and they need to get their shit together. But I know I'm going to get some heat because they're going to be like, "Oh, this is a Republican bill," and da. And so whatever. I'm already aware, and I really don't care. And you know what I'm saying? These Republicans need to get their shit together because these guys are rhinos. They're not about freedom. U.S. lawmakers aim to close the hemp THCA loophole in a new budget proposal. That's right. The U.S. House lawmakers are taking up a must-pass appropriations bill that proposes rewriting the rules on hemp so that the legality of intoxicating products such as Delta-8 THC edibles is no longer debatable. The House Appropriations Committee released the fiscal year 2026 Agricultural, Rural Development, Food and Drug Administration and related agencies appropriations bill on June 4th, and the 138-page legislation covers a variety of issues facing U.S. farmers, ranchers, and rural communities, and intends to provide more than $25 billion of the B in discretionary allocations to help protect America's food and drug supply. The legislation is passed every year to fund farm programs, and however, the 2026 proposal, as introduced, would redefine hemp to exclude any hemp-derived cannabinoid products, as in finished goods containing cannabinoids that are not capable of being naturally produced. Cannabinoids that are capable of being naturally produced but were synthesized or manufactured outside of the plant, or quantifiable amounts of THC or THCA, or other cannabinoids that have similar effects on humans or animals. The legislation authorizes the U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services to determine what qualifies as quantifiable amounts of THC or other cannabinoids, and meanwhile, industrial hemp grown for fiber, grain, or other non-cannabinoid purposes would be defined separately. In other words, the legislation would backtrack on defining hemp as containing no more than 0.3% Delta-9 THC on a dry weight basis during a pre-harvest field test, as provided under the 2018 Farm Bill, which federally legalized hemp. Since the 2018 Farm Bill, the intoxicating hemp product marketplace has exploded to a multi-billion-dollar industry, especially in states absent of cannabis legalization, such as Texas, where cannabinoids from legal hemp plants are extracted and manufactured into consumables sold at vape shops, convenience stores, and gas stations that are often unregulated. U.S. House Appropriations Committee Chairman Tom Cole, Republican from Oklahoma, released a 4-page summary of the 2026 spending bill on June 4th, writing that it puts the health, safety, and prosperity of American producers and consumers first, in a quote, he says. Among the key takeaways in this summary, the authors wrote that the bill supports the Trump administration and mandates of the American people by closing the hemp loophole that has resulted in the proliferation of unregulated intoxicating hemp products, including Delta-8 and hemp flower, being sold online and in gas stations across the country. Separately, Cole said that Representative Andy Harris, Republican from Maryland, who has had a history of anti-cannabis policy stances, stewarded the legislation. Harris is known among the industry stakeholders in Washington, D.C. for spearheading a federal rider that has prevented the city from taxing and regulating adult-use cannabis sales for the past decade, and despite district voters backing a 2014 legalization measure with 70% majority. Harris chairs the House Subcommittee on Agricultural, Rural Development, Food, Drug Administration, which marked up the 2026 spending bill on June 5th and reported it favorably to the full committee. In a quote, "This bill also closes the hemp loophole from the 2018 Farm Bill that has resulted in the proliferation of intoxicating cannabinoid products, including Delta-8 and hemp flower, being sold online and in gas stations nationwide under the false guise of being USDA approved," Harris said during Thursday's markup hearing. In an additional quote, he says, "As many states have stepped in to curb these dangerous products from reaching consumers, particularly children, it's time for Congress to act to close this loophole while protecting the legitimate industrial hemp industry," he says, end quote. Last Congress, the House Agricultural Committee approved an amendment offered by Representative Mary Miller, Republican from Illinois, that included similar language to redefine hemp in what would have been a devastating impact on the cannabinoid hemp industry. That amendment was added to the House's version of the 2024 Farm Bill reauthorization bill that never found the finish line. The reauthorization, which was supposed to unfold in 2023, was delayed for another year, and in part, Miller's amendment would have redefined hemp to include total THC, including THCA, in the Farm Bill's calculation of 0.3% on a dry weight basis. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable, the USHR, an organization that advocates on behalf of businesses, called the fiscal year 2026 spending bill another blanket attack on the legal hemp industry. Another blatant attack on the legal hemp industry. In a quote, Representative Andy Harris is at it again, reviving his crusade to dismantle the hemp industry by quietly inserting harmful language into a federal spending bill. The organization wrote in a June 4th statement, calling on its members and supporters to contact their representatives to oppose the provisions. And buried on page 113 is a provision that redefines hemp in a way that could ban the vast majority of safe legal hemp-derived products sold nationwide. Any product with quantifiable level of THC, according to the USHR. Harris also included the Miller Amendment language in the text of the subcommittee's fiscal year 2025 Agriculture FDA Appropriations Bill, but that inclusion was ultimately defeated, you guys. Well, hopefully this will also get defeated and won't make it into the final bill. And I think there's going to be a lot of horse trading going back and forth, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. But prohibition just doesn't work if we learned anything from alcohol at all, and these guys just need to get their shit together as far as I'm concerned.
Jason Beck is getting upset because this is about to tie into his interests.
My interests are the cannabis industry overall, Jenny Beth.
Oh,
and
I
it's
love
all,
that.
and
That's a very political response, Jason.
And it's all one plant, and it needs to be all one plant, and should just be free and open to the people.
Absolutely, you had that one in your back pocket, ready to pull it out and pew pew pew. I love it.
You know, I stay with ready to pull things out, Jenny Beth.
Hey, good morning. Jess, you're on mute, love.
Jess, you're on mute, Jesse.
I love how people who know nothing about cannabis clearly decide that they're going to define what it is.
Yeah.
And in defining what it is, they go, it's a plant that excludes everything that is in the plant. That's just like, it's the most asinine hubris possible thing that they could say or write. And these are the people that are in our government. And how many other things are they defining for us that they know nothing about? I think this is a case in point that our government's full of people, especially the House and the Senate, that don't know anything about what they're doing. And they're signing off on bills that they haven't read, and they don't understand the definitions, and they don't understand what the definitions are even referring to. And when it comes to cannabis, they definitely don't know that, and they're screwing us as this goes along. It's just sad.
I totally agree. Dr. Mark, what do you got to say about this? I know you're going to have something to say about this one.
Well, I don't think, you're absolutely right, Jesse. They sign these things without ever reading them because I don't think they fully understand the ramifications of the 2018 Farm Bill, let alone the, whatever the new version is going to be. I believe that their intent was to commercialize industrial hemp as it's known in Canada, which is not type 3 cannabis drug variety that is high in CBD. I don't think they ever contemplated CBD production from industrial hemp. I think it was all seed oil, protein, rope, not dope, right? So, we've talked about it a few times here on High at 9, which is that the FD&C Act prohibits the sale, interstate commerce of a FDA-approved active ingredient of an FDA-approved drug in food, feed, or cosmetics, right? So that'll tell you that they didn't even contemplate a route to market for CBD produced from hemp. So with no route to market for CBD, what was that CBD going to do? It basically came the supply chain to create hemp-derived D9, which, when you put into a 12-ounce beverage like this at 10 milligrams, it is 0.0028%. So again, 10 milligrams and 12 ounces is 2 orders of magnitude below the 0.3 threshold. So, I guess there was some chatter online this week that was talking about that 0.3 threshold only being applied to plant material and not being applied to formulated products, right? But, I guess an overinterpretation of the 2018 Farm Bill was that anything below 0.3% in THC is going to be fine. And if you add up all the hemp acreage, and I've done this before, you make an assumption of 0.3 of THC per plant, and what an yield from an acre of hemp could be, close to 1,000 pounds. If you take the acreage of hemp, and not the acreage that's grown for seed oil and rope and fiber, just the CBD hemp, which is some fraction of that total acreage, you still come out with hundreds of thousands of grams of THC. So even at 0.3%, that's still, just on the scale of hemp production today, is a lot of THC. So what did they expect? That THC was just going to go away? No. It's concentrated during the crystallization of CBD process in something called the mother liquor. And those mother liquors are finding their way into, hemp-derived beverages, gummies, whatever. So, like you said, Jason, it's all one plant. It's all the cannabis plant. The multi-state operators and regulated cannabis, a lot of them are now playing on both sides of that fence, right? So Curaleaf, Wana, and other multi-state operators have basically a footprint on both sides of that fence, because they recognize that there's a lot of money to be made in that hemp space without the over-onerous regulations that the regulated cannabis space plays in. And ultimately, they're going to not want to see market share lost to this hemp space, and if they are, they're going to get in. So I don't know. The other thing that's always a red herring about the Farm Bill is that its regulation runs out at harvest. So once that plant is deemed as hemp, right, what happens to that CBD that's produced from that hemp is not regulated by the Farm Bill whatsoever.
Dr. Mark, I think we just found the loophole in the loophole.
We didn't just find it, dude. It's been out.
Jason, in 2016, when I walked into my office at United Cannabis and there was a vial of red CBN that had been converted from the hemp that we'd extracted and what we pulled out of the mother liquor, we've been found it. We've been done did it. I think the government just didn't understand what they were regulating once again. And because the government didn't understand what they were regulating, they didn't understand who they were regulating. Mr. Officer, we are drug dealers and we will find a way to get through. I don't know what to tell you. And it's been really an interesting ride. I'm fine with exploiting loopholes. The problem comes in for me when we have people who are unscrupulous operators who are putting out products that just aren't safe for people. That's pretty fucked up. There's no forethought in that. And at the end of the day, when we're tasked with being stewards of a plant that is medicine for people, how dare you put something out that could hurt somebody? And also,
you hit the nail on the head by saying that we're drug dealers. And the point of that really is that we always figure out the way around.
Yeah.
And because prohibition, look, the government has created a culture of people who are masters at figuring out how to find the loophole and how to get through the system and how to make it all work. Pounds of weed have been being shipped and flown and driven across this country for how many years? 50, 60 years, right? We've figured out how to beat the system every which way. Create a new system. You've created a culture that's just a master at beating the system. If you want to change that culture, you've got to stop trying to regulate them so much and start trying to just figure them out and understand them. The first step is understanding, and they just can't even do that.
You know what, Jesse, that's a fantastic point and a perfect transition for me to roll into my second story of the day, because I totally agree with you on that. I think that.
Oh yeah, you're going back to back.
Yeah, I'm going back to back, and then I'm gonna have the final story of the day, and then that way, then after the half we'll go to Dr. Mark, and then Jesse, you get to introduce them both, Jenny Beth. So make sure that you're ready.
Shit!
I'm always ready. I don't have to get ready if I stay ready.
All right. Well, let me tell you something. Oh man. Oh wait. That's
you chopped up.
No. Hold on a second. I thought this was supposed to be my last story. Hold on a second.
Got no Dr. T today?
Oh wait. All right, I have two good stories. Okay, I guess that's what it was. This story is so good, you guys. I thought it was supposed to be my last story of the day, so I'm sorry because we did want to try to end on a good note, and so I have two good stories. So we're going to end both halves of the show on a good note. So there's a little spoiler there for you guys. But guess what, Jenny Beth? Ohio, they double the limit on cannabis flower consumers can purchase, you guys. That's right. Ohio has reported more than $555 million in adult use cannabis sales and starting this week, dispensaries are permitted to sell more than twice the amount of cannabis flower they have sold to non-medical customers since the program's launch, you guys. Dispensaries can now sell up to 2.5 ounces of dried marijuana plant material per customer per day, according to the Ohio Division of Cannabis Control. When Ohio's adult use cannabis program launched in August of 2024, dispensaries were permitted to sell up to a single ounce of flower per customer per day. Roughly 25 of the state's 147 dispensaries that are licensed to sell adult use cannabis are located in the Dayton region. And Grace Bondi, spokesperson for Verano and Zenleaf Dispensary, said dispensaries welcome the change, and Zenleaf operates a Riverside location. In a quote, allowing larger purchase quantities brings Ohio more in line with neighboring states and mature cannabis markets, and it is a win-win for consumers, businesses, and the state, said Bondi. In an additional quote, cannabis consumers will have increased purchase options. Ohio's legal cannabis retailers and cultivators have the opportunity to benefit from increased sales quantities and local communities, and the state stands to receive additional tax revenue from larger purchases. State officials said the lower limits were in place to ensure that access for Ohio's 454,947 registered medical marijuana patients was not inhibited. And in a quote, the division's priority continues to be ensuring medical marijuana patients have adequate supply and maintain their medical marijuana card. And the division knows that licensees share that priority. And the division said in its own announcement, in a quote, since non-medical cannabis sales began in August of 2024, the market has demonstrated the ability to support both medical marijuana patients and non-medical consumers alike. We are encouraged by the Division of Cannabis Control's updated guidance based on the market's ability to support both medical and adult use consumers, and look forward to celebrating 1 year of adult use cannabis in Ohio this upcoming August, Bondi said. Ohioans passed Issue 2 in 2023, and under Ohio law, consumers 21 and older can buy up to 2.5 ounces of adult use cannabis at licensed dispensaries. Jennifer Crone, the general manager of Pure Ohio Wellness Dispensary in London, said the daily limits have been frustrating to dispensary operators and consumers alike, and many customers have waited to purchase more than the state's limit, but they can't. With an ounce taking all of the 10-day allotment, it left no room for additional items such as edibles or concentrates, and therefore limiting their options of getting the variety they were looking to purchase, said Cron. In an additional quote, many people drive quite a distance and they prefer to buy larger quantities to prevent multiple trips. Being limited to that ability or arbitrary number was definitely an issue that people consistently voiced their opinion on. And since the program's 2024 launch, a total of 84,537 pounds of plant material have been sold by Ohio dispensaries. An additional 9.3 million units of manufactured cannabis products have also been sold. And the plant sales average for a 1/10 of an ounce in plant material was $18.74 as of last week. And according to the Division of Cannabis Control's weekly sales report, this is nearly 30% drop in its price since the adult use program started. Eric Rodriguez, VP of Retail at the Cannabis Company, said the Columbia Care Dispensary on Wayne Avenue in Dayton will be ready to meet any uptick in demand that results from the rule change. In a quote says, we support Ohio's decision to increase daily purchase limits, which gives adult use consumers more flexibility and better reflects how people actually shop and consume cannabis, Rodriguez said. Under the updated rules for purchase other than plant material, customers can buy up to 15,000 milligrams of THC between edibles, vapes, and other products. And all other products apply toward the customer's cannabis product limit of 15,000 milligrams of total THC content, according to the Division of Cannabis Control. control. These updated rules only apply to non-medical customers, the division said. In Ohio, medical marijuana patients and caregivers can purchase up to a 90-day supply of cannabis still, you guys. Well, look at that. Look at that. Ohio, some great news to end on. You can now buy 10 tenths, it sounds like, and max out in Ohio instead of only being forced to buy 5 and shorten yourself on an ounce. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Well, you just gotta put together the puzzle here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Ohio is surrounded by illegal states.
Yep.
Ohio also has a 10% excise tax on their cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are going to be driving from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Indiana to enter Ohio and buy some weed, and the state is going to take 10% of that money and put it in their coffers?
Oh, 100%. But
I'm pretty sure that the state figured this out, and they're like, "Yeah, let's raise the limit. That is smart."
Well,
Money from the other states, and they know it.
Jesse, I think what it actually was even more than that is the fact that Michigan was just eating their lunch so much, and they were pissed that Michigan beat them in football, and now the fact that they're beating them in weed bowls smoked, you know what I mean, was just a dampering effect.
Point? That was fucking crazy.
What are you talking about, Jenny?
The football. He's the one that always.
We've always been talking about the football here, so I don't even understand what you're talking about, Jenny.
I don't even think that it's so much that Michigan's eating their lunch, because Michigan is, probably just shipping down more fucking backdoor packs than anything. Because what do we have in Michigan? A bunch of failed California operators. What do failed California operators do? We backdoor shit. So like Michigan is finding the same problems. But I think Ohio is finally waking up to the fact that, like, what are you going to do with a half ounce of weed? Like, really, what are you going to do with a half ounce? How long is that going to last the average bear? Jason, how long would a half ounce last year?
A day?
Obviously.
Thank you. It's 1/10 of your fucking pre-roll joints that you pre-roll at home.
No, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a lot. I'll tell you that much. It's definitely not that much.
It is 1/10. No, I've watched him. He rolls up a half ounce at 10.
Yeah. I've watched him too. Yeah.
You guys are so cute.
But
Dr. Mark, what would you do?
Nobody's driving from West Virginia to Michigan, though. That's the thing. But people are going to drive from West Virginia into Ohio. Same with Kentucky.
Especially Kentucky's governor is like, hey, go out of state to get it since you can't get it here yet.
You know what a lot of people do for transportation out there, you guys? And I just wonder if this is going to affect the train, Amtrak.
Oh, yeah. Well, have you ever taken an Amtrak any distance? It's kind of fun.
Yeah. I do the Surf Rider. I used to from LA to San Diego and right along the PCH.
Great train.
Yeah, fantastic. And then I've taken the train from Washington D.C. to New York a few times, back and forth. And so I've done the sprint. You know what I mean? We stopped in Boston for a second, and
Great. Now they're going to start stopping and frisking on the train in Ohio.
That's what I was kind of getting at, Jenny Beth. I wonder if we're going to see any type of increased enforcement on Amtrak because of this.
I hope not.
No way. They won't catch up to that. Again, this goes back to the whole drug dealers thing. How many people you think in Pennsylvania on the border in some rural town are going to go over the border, grab a couple ounces, come back and sell it for $400 an ounce when they got it for 50 or 100?
Well, and here's the other issue too. When we're tracking people and what they have and what they can buy by ounces. And Colorado is a great testament to this. Yes, you could buy 1 ounce per person, right? And, there's a very notable story about looping in Colorado and how fucking funky that gets and how operators will make sure that shit's crazy. So, I don't know. I think that when Colorado first started, even when it was medical, there's this beautiful street called Broadway. And it's called the Green Mile. Why? Because there were like 15 fucking dispensaries. And you go into the Little Brown House and you get your really fucking cheap ounce. Shout out to the Little Brown House. You guys were hooking it up with the real homie hookup forever. And then you pop across the street to fucking River Rock. And then you ping pong across the street. There's no way to, in real time, actually track what a consumer is purchasing. Now, is it on them? Absolutely. So we'll see what happens. But also, guys, you have to understand that if I myself am trying to piece together a pound, because I myself am going to go back to Pennsylvania or wherever and hook my friends up, I'm going to hit every single one of your little podunk dispensaries and get all my.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. That's how it works right there. That's exactly what's going to be going on. And I guarantee you, Ohio knows what they're doing. Like somebody in the Ohio legislature passed this around and was like, look, let's just take all these states' money.
Well. And on that, we're going to roll into our... Dr. Mark, do you have anything you want to say about Ohio?
Yeah. In Michigan, they say, why does it never flood in Michigan?
Why?
Ohio sucks.
Ohio sucks. Oh, boy. And on that, we're going to roll into our next commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Billboard?
We love billboards, and speaking of billboards, make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it, you'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and all the articles that we cover on today's show you can read directly on our website at www.high9news.com just shortly after the show. And we do want to thank all of you viewers out there. We did surpass 1,300,000 views on this channel just the other day, and so we definitely want to...
1 million?
1,300,000 views, Jenny Beth. Yes, so thank you all so much for all of your support, watching every day, and make sure that you share all this stuff with your friends and help us continue to grow. We also surpassed 5,600 subscribers the other day, so thank you to everyone and their support and subscribing to the channel. And all of our sponsors that help sponsor the show, you can find in the description of this video down below, and one of them is Liberal Tears Energy Drink. Make sure that you use that link, that specific link in our description. Order yourself a case of Liberal Tears. 150 milligrams of caffeine in every can. No liberals were harmed, and 0 grams of sugar, you guys. And it's so sweet.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
We are back at Jenny Beth, and all I have to say, Jenny Beth, is weed for the people.
Weed for the people. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, you guys go share the show link. Share it with your mom, your grandma, your friends, your everybody. Put it on your Instagram. Put it on your X. Put it on your Truth Socials. Put it wherever. Costs $0.00, and we would sure appreciate it. All right. Who we got next?
Dr. Mark, Jenny Beth.
Coming up next, from the shores of Lake Champlain. He looks like he's in his office today, so no beautiful views. But there's a lot of stuff going on that board back there. Oh, an apple a day does not keep Dr. Mark away. Dr. Mark Scialdone.
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Where's Dr. T? I got missing my buddy today, so hopefully he had a good reason for taking off today. So today, my story comes from a journal called Forensic Chemistry. And the title of the article is New Perspectives on THCA Decarboxylation and Accurate GCMS Quantitation of Total THC in Cannabis Using Analyte Protectants. So let's see, lots of acronyms there. So the first one is THCA, that's tetrahydrocannabinolic acid. The next acronym was GCMS. That stands for gas chromatography with mass spec detection. The way a gas chromatography works is you inject a sample into a thing called an injection port, and then that heats it up. And as the compounds volatilize, that means they're turning from a liquid into a gas. They get pushed by a carrier gas through this column, which is this long, cylindrical, very fine tube. And what happens in that very fine tube called the column is that the compounds are separated based on their boiling points, right? And the most volatile compounds with the lowest boiling points, they come out first, and then your higher boilers come out last, right? That's the way gas chromatography uses. Now, when the column is, when it exits the column, it goes into a detector. You'll see sometimes gas chromatography coupled with something called the FID, which is flame ionization detection. That's where they burn anything that comes out of the column. And you can imagine as these compounds come out, when they burn, they actually emit light, right? That's the flame. And the intensity of that light is directly proportional to the amount of compound that's coming out of the column, right? Just by light intensity alone. This particular technique uses something called a mass spectrometer. Mass spectrometer is an instrument that basically shoots stuff into a vacuum with a lot of energy, and it fragments the molecules, right? And so the fragmentation pattern of the molecule is very indicative of the molecule itself, kind of like a molecular fingerprint, right? So let's talk about this. So the abstract reads, forensic and chemical commercial laboratories rely on well-characterized analytical methods to accurately determine total tetrahydrocannabinol, or what's called total THC, which is the sum of the decarboxylated cannabinolic acid, right, times 0.877, right, because a certain amount of that mass is lost when it decarboxylates. And so if you're starting off with 1 gram of THCA and you decarboxylate that, you get 877 milligrams of decarboxylated THC. Okay, so the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, which we commonly refer to here at High and Nine as the Farm Bill, restricts the total THC in cannabis for classification as hemp for commercial purposes. We all know what that line in the sand is, right, Jesse? What is it? You're on mute.
I missed
I'll
it.
say 0.3%, right?
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
the line in the sand, right? 0.3%. Okay, which is a small number. Okay, so gas chromatography with mass spectrometry detection, which is GCMS, is frequently employed for cannabis measurements due to its simplicity and speed of analysis. However, several issues complicate the determination of total THC by GCMS, which are well documented but unresolved. In the current study, the origins of potential GCMS method biases are investigated and novel approaches are presented to mitigate interferences. The behavior of THCA and delta-9 THC during gas chromatography mass spec analyses were studied extensively using test solutions containing isotopically labeled analogs. Okay, another teaching moment. A professor, I cannot pass up a teaching moment, right? So what is an isotope? What is isotopically labeled molecules? Okay, so let's think about the hydrogen atom, right? The hydrogen atom contains, when I look at my periodic table over my right shoulder here, the hydrogen atom contains 1 electron and 1 proton. There's no neutrons, right? No neutrons in a hydrogen atom. So when you add a neutron to a hydrogen atom, it becomes now a deuterium atom, right? And it now has 1 more mass because it now has a neutron and a proton. Both have mass of 1 by definition. right? And there's no mass to the electron. So when you use an isotope of hydrogen, you're using something either called deuterium, which is where we add 1 neutron, or you could add something called tritium, which is where we add 2 neutrons, right? So that deuterium has got a mass of 2 and tritium has got a mass of 3. In this case, they're using deuterium because tritium turns out to be radioactive because it radioactively decays to deuterium. Okay, so that's what isotopes are. And isotopically labeled cannabinoids is where rather than having a hydrogen in the molecule, they have a deuterium, right? So remember, the deuterium is carrying an extra neutron, so therefore it carries more molecular weight, and that's how you could distinguish between THC and isotopically labeled THC, as they have different masses. Okay, a plant matrix effect was identified that significantly increased THCA and delta-9 THC responses for cannabis extracts compared with calibrant solutions. So the calibrant is a commercially available, what's called a certified reference standard, right, which is formulated at a particular concentration. And so we use those reference standards to form something called a calibration curve, right? Typically, those reference standards are sold at a standard concentration of 1 mg per mil. It means there's 1 milligram in exactly 1 milliliter. And what the analytical chemist will do is they'll make dilutions of that solution to get 0.1 mg per mil, 0.01 mg per mil, and they'll do the injections. And like I said, the response in a detector is going to be the more of the compound, the more of the response, and that's a linear response, right? So you look at how concentration changes with the response factor in the mass spectrometer, and you develop what's called a calibration curve. Then when you're analyzing an unknown sample and you get a certain peak height, you go to your calibration curve, and now you can read what the concentration is, right? Hopefully I explained that. Okay. A mechanism is proposed based on the interaction of THCA and delta-9 THC with silanols. Okay, so what are silanols? Silanols are what is the column is made out of. So that's the material that the stuff is flowing through after it's heated and before it goes to the mass spectrometer. So what holds on to these compounds are these things called silanols, right? And that's things like silica gel. Clays are also silanols, but for this purpose, just think of the stationary phase on the column. Use of active site blocking agents known as analyte protectants reduce these interactions and achieve suitable conditions for the quantitation of total THC by gas chromatography mass spectrometry. When cannabis plant extracts and calibrants were processed under the recommended conditions, the results were comparable to liquid chromatography with photodiode array detection and analysis. Okay. Liquid chromatography is different than gas chromatography. In gas chromatography, you're heating stuff up and you're converting a liquid into a gas. Now you're separating the gases based on differences in boiling points. When you use liquid chromatography, you're taking that liquid sample and injecting it into a column that's separating out the different components based on the polarity. All molecules have different polarities, and the way that the molecules' polarities interact with the stationary phase, in this case also a column filled with silanols, is going to determine how well those components separate. In this case, they validated their GC method by showing that it could be validated with a HPLC method. The experimental findings ultimately provide evidence to explain the behavior of cannabinoids in the gas chromatography mass spec system, as well as offering new options for improving the accuracy of total THC measurements. Well, this is definitely needed. This comes to us from the Chemical Sciences Division of the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. down in Gaithersburg, Maryland. So this is an organization known as NIST. NIST is a organization that's involved in standardizing methods and standardizing materials. Again, the National Institutes of Standards and Technology. That's basically what they do. Government funded, one of the essential operations in government that helps keep our food supply and our pharmaceutical supply and our supply of all products that humans come in contact with safe. So this is really super important. And one of the reasons why I know this is because I've been an expert witness on a case that's involved with hemp versus differentiation of hemp versus cannabis. And what I can tell you is that the DEA currently uses a outdated method that does not report THC based on a dry weight basis of plant material. And that's absolutely required by the letter of the law in the Farm Bill. So it says that you will not have that industrial hemp as 0.3% Delta-9 THC or less based on a dry weight basis. And that very end is very important. So you have to know what the potency is, not on wet plant material or live plant material, but on a dry weight basis. What I can tell you right now is that their current method that they're using is basically using an internal standard that's not an isotopically labeled THC molecule. So the isotopically labeled THC is going to have identical response factors in the mass spectrometer as THC will. What they currently use a different molecule altogether as an internal standard. And so what we don't know is how linear the response factor for the different molecule they're using as an internal standard in THC. All they do is they compute a ratio, and if the ratio is greater than 1, they label that evidence as being cannabis. Well, this group here at NIST is basically coming up with a more accurate, better, reproducible method, and the DEA and other law enforcement agencies desperately need a better way, because the current way that they're using right now is just not up to date, not modern. And when you go to a cannabis testing lab today and you submit a sample, you're going to get a full panel certificate of analysis that's going to tell you all the cannabinoids that are in there. Those are all based on HPLC methods that are using, again, that standardized calibration curve that I was talking about. So the results at those labs are going to be much, much more accurate than the results of the DEA lab. And it's really important to make sure that the DEA labs are getting good results, because those results make a difference in the court where somebody can go away for a long time for supposedly growing cannabis when they were actually growing hemp. So it's just great to see these kinds of things coming out. This is the kind of research that we need. Hopefully the DEA will read this article and they'll be like, hey, we should maybe use this procedure instead, because this is just giving us much, much better results. So that's my review today, a little bit of science on Friday afternoon. Hope you people have some great plans for the weekend, and I hope cannabis is a part of it. I'd be interested in what my other correspondents have to say on this story.
Well, Jenny Beth, why don't you start this thing off, Jenny?
Well, first of all, I love the teaching moments, and I also love the teacher behavior when Jesse wasn't paying attention in class and you called him for an answer.
Yeah, that was great. I had to run to go to the bathroom, and he calls me right when I get back. That was awesome.
That was excellent. He saw you.
Yeah, let me pick up my grade book, right?
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of my math teacher that would see me falling asleep and drop some shit on my desk really loudly. But no, I guess, not all standards are created the same, but I mean, at least we're able to validate with the other methods. I don't know. I think that I just don't trust a DEA testing lab to try and use that in a case. I don't know. I just, there was a lot dropped there, Dr. Mark.
Well, it's important that for these methods to get out there and, for us to cover them on High at 9, so people are talking about it, and then maybe again, attorneys can clue into this paper and look at some of the evidence that's presented in a court of law and say, hey, this method is much more accurate. You guys should use this method and throw out this other data. Especially if you're talking about 0.3%. Let's talk about that for a second. So 0.3%, you're less than a single percent, right? So a single percent is like, if you have $1, 1% of that dollar is a penny, right? So 1% of that dollar would be 0.3 pennies. I mean, that's, again, an order of magnitude, and you have to really give it up for, anything when you're testing stuff and you're down in the weeds, especially if you took those THC molecules and now you further dilute them in a beverage. Now they're going to be even lower in concentration. So really having precise and accurate analytical methods. And also, I guess what I should point out is this isn't just the DEA saying, or the NIST saying, oh, we have this method. This is published in a peer-reviewed journal. So in order for this to get published in the journal, they had to pass this in front of subject matter experts who understand the deficiencies in the current testing methods and say, hey, you know what? This needs to be published because this is a much better method than what people are using today. So in that respect, I mean, it's good that we're covering it here. It's good that maybe an attorney or two might hear about this, and maybe that might even result in getting somebody's case thrown out because, again, the way that they're doing some of these measurements don't necessarily hold the water that it needs to.
Okay.
Interesting. Jesse.
That makes sense?
Jesse, did you calculate all that, Jesse?
Yeah, I mean, I did eventually catch up because I went and read the. It's not an article.
It's a study.
Read the study or I read the abstract at least.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
read the whole study, but yeah, I understand what's going on. It sounds to me like, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that all of our testing has been so off across the board, no matter what state, no matter what lab. There's just so many differences in testing that happen. Dr. Mark, is that why people get such wildly different results? Like people are getting these 40% THC markers in plants that clearly is not even possible.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. One of the biggest reasons is, you remember when you harvest the plant consists of up to 90% water, right? 90% of what you see in that plant is water weight, right? So when you dry it out to the specification of, we always used to try to bend the stalks, and if the stalk snaps, right, that tells you that you're at the right dryness level, which is typically somewhere between, I don't know, maybe like about 11 or 12% by weight water, right? So the problem is that reporting on a dry weight basis, you have to remove all of that water. Dry is dry. Dry is no water. Right?
Dry as the Sahara.
Now, what's that?
Dry as the Sahara.
Yes, exactly. But what we used to call in chemical engineering class bone dry. Bone dry means no water. Absolutely no water. Well, if you think about that, Jesse, I'm going to take a bud and I'm going to heat it up to remove all the water, right, to get to that dry weight basis. Well, guess what? When you heat up that bud, you're going to lose terpenes and you're going to lose some of the fragrant molecules. You're going to lose a lot more than just the water. What happens? You're not going to lose the THC because the THC is a much higher boiler. That stays behind. So as you offload that water and you offload those terpenes, guess what happens to the THC that's left behind?
Get it inflated.
It goes up.
You get it.
It goes up in relative concentration because you're getting rid of everything else, right?
Right.
Now, no one buys bone dry weed at the dispensary, right? And no one smokes bone dry weed. I don't know. Maybe when we were younger, right? Things were, like left like 2 years ago, there's some trim in the back of the barn. Oh, yeah, that's dry. You could smoke that. Didn't get you higher. But the point is that if you're going to compare a testing method from one lab to another, to another, to another, what has to be standardized is how you're correcting that moisture and how you're correcting for that water. That water, again, creates a significant variable that can change. So if you're weighing a bud and the bud's got, I don't know, 15% water, or you're weighing a bud and the bud's only got 5% water, those weights are going to determine what's in the denominator, right? So remember, 0.3% based on a dry weight basis. So you have to know what that dry weight basis is. Most common testing labs, what they'll do is they'll take a small amount of bud and they do what's called a water activity measurement. And the water activity measurement tells the chemist at the lab how much water is in that material as received. Then what they do is they run the HPLC on the material as received. So you don't dry out the material. You don't dry out the material that actually gets tested. What you do is you test the material as received, which has water and not bone dry, but then you apply a correction to that based on how much water is in there, right? Because that applying that correction gives you that dry weight basis number, and that's what, like, the Farm Bill is requiring everything on a dry weight basis. I think in most cases, most states are asking for potency on a dry weight basis. That right there is one of the reasons why you're going to get different results from lab to lab to lab to lab, because they're all using methods in determining what that number is. So it's problematic to do comparisons between different labs that are running different methods.
Right. So if I'm understanding this correctly, there's way too many variables. If I'm a farm and I harvest my weed and then I cure it, first of all, there's a lot of variables in how I cure it. Then if I'm going to send it to 3 different labs, there's so many variables in sending it to 3 different labs. Did I package it exactly the same way? Is it exactly airtight? Was it exactly the same batch from the same exact cola or plant or part of the
right?
Plant?
Well, is it a homogeneous representation?
Right, exactly. So by the time it arrives at these 3 different labs, how long was it in the mail? How hot did it get? Well, was it on a plane? Was it on a truck? Was it on these different things? Whatever the case may be, if it's going to go to 3 different labs, you're going to have 3 wildly different results by the time before they even test it. And so would there be a way to standardize that water activity measurement so that each lab is getting the same, like coming back to the same number before they even do the test?
You bring up a really good point. So there's 2 things that are working against each other, especially if you're talking about evidence that was seized at a bust, right? So like if you're weighing like a live plant, most of what you're weighing is water. And in case I've actually seen, not the case I'm currently working on, but other cases, I've seen where they weigh the root ball and the plant itself as part of the evidence, right? So it's crazy. So now you're going to get this huge number, right? Which probably makes their numbers look better because, we have these many pounds, and you could multiply by some street value number and now blow up a number in the news and say, all this stuff was confiscated and what. But so the 2 things that are working against you is when you dry out, you're increasing the amount of THC. So what may test as hemp wet, right? Because there's so much other stuff there and you're trying to get that 0.3%. That's the reason why they make it on a dry weight basis, right, Jesse? So you can't say,
exactly what dry weight is. Like, is there a specific water activity level that means it's dry, or what is that? How do they define what dry actually is?
Dry means no water.
Like 0% or
right? If your kid's diaper is dry, right? It's dry.
Yeah, if there's baby powder,
The vapor powder
Like,
don't
if I
stick.
have flour that has 0% water in it, basically, if you blow on it, it disintegrates, and right, like,
Right.
so how do they define? Because it's like not possible to have 0% water. So where is the line?
Right. And so like even if you did something like if you did a THC percentage based on a dry weight basis, because you can't extract THC from water, right? So the water is adding weight to the plant material. But like let's say we take that plant material and we extract it, now we make a distillate, right? And now we're looking at THC percentage in the distillate. Well, now there's no water, right? Because we've distilled THC over. And so like what you're getting in that THC distillate now is a certain percentage of THC that is related to the potency of the plant material, you see? Because in order for the potency of the plant material to have a certain level of THC, you should produce a certain amount of distillate, right? Like if there's 20%, let's just use these numbers, 20% THC on a dry weight basis. If you have a kilogram of that plant material and it's 20% THC on a dry weight basis, theoretically, you should be able to get 200 grams from that kilogram of plant material. Do you follow my thinking?
Yep.
20% of a kilogram is 200 grams, right?
Yep.
Right? You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep. Got it? Okay.
Yep.
You with
We got
me?
it. We're with you.
Okay. So
20%
so
of 1,000
this is one of the
200.
reasons. This is one of the reasons why THC percentage does mean a lot to people who are in the supply chain, because if you're a processor and you're making distillate, you want the most potent plant material you can get, because the more potent your plant materials, if you're making distillate from a 20% material, you're going to get twice the amount of distillate as from a 10% material, right? Right? Follow me?
Yep.
Right? So their THC percentage matters, but remember, when now you're looking at the distillate, there's no water present, right? So you should be able to make a good measurement there without having to worry about the water. The reason why the water matters is because, yeah, when you're buying trim or you're buying bulk biomass and you need a certain amount of THC distillate out of that biomass, that should correlate to the dry weight basis of what the THC percentage is in that biomass.
Wouldn't this be a lot easier if we did it by wet?
Well, the problem
fresh,
there is
like the moment it's harvested.
Wet. Like people could add water intent, like they can dry the weed, right, and then take like 900 grams, add 100 grams of water, and now they're getting.
Well,
they could dilute it.
What I meant is like in the field.
Yeah, basically, right. It's like those kids who are adding gravel to their packs, right?
The reason I say that, Dr. Mark, is I know that like in hash production, if you want to make hash and you're trying to extract the trichome heads, right? It's very useful to understand what your percentage of hash weight is going to be off of the wet plant. Because if you're going to do like fresh frozen, right, you're going to just cut the plant down and you're going to put it right in a freezer, right? Then you want to weigh that wet plant at the beginning, and then you want to wash the plant and get all the trichome heads off, and then know the difference, like what was your weight of your wet plant and fresh frozen material versus how much hash you got at the end. And it's a pretty simple calculation. And in general, if you get 3%, that's a lot. Like if it's the end, if you had 1,000, if you had 1 kilogram of fresh frozen, then at the end you should have 30 grams of hash.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And that would be actually that would be like a lot of trichomes off of that plant. So, and you wanted to hit that. So people would say, oh, I'm getting 6%. And it's like, there's no way, dude. Like hardly anybody gets 6% trichomes off of their plant material. So wouldn't that be a useful way to think about this?
So a couple things. Way? So like, so the people who are making like fresh frozen live resin, right? So you're cutting down the plant at harvest. You've trimmed off all your fan and non-productive biomass, and now you're basically just freezing those nugs. Okay, so in a live resin yield, you might only get like 1%, 2%, because
that's usually what
everything in that denominator is weighted down by the fact that you have all that fucking water in there, right?
Right.
But if you took that same material, Jesse, and dried it out to where the stalks snap, now you did a extraction. Well, let's go back. So the live resin, when you do the extraction, remember when you extract fresh frozen material, in between it being freshly harvested and drying so the stalks snap, not only do you lose water, but you lose a lot of terpene content.
Yep.
So when you do a fresh frozen extraction with closed loop hydrocarbon, typically what would be a shatter, which would be a solid, which would be basically the amorphous solid of THCA. Now there's so much more terpenes in there that guess what? The terpenes dissolve that. Now what you get is a liquid extract, right? And that goes right into the vape pen, right? So now you're taking an extract from cannabis without putting any diluents, without adding any store-bought terpenes, goes right into your vape pen. It's going to be the sauce, right? So the thing is like, it's not unusual if you're doing an extraction on dried material to get like a 15 or even as high as a 20% yield if you're doing a nug run. Because now what you're doing is you've dried out all that water, right? So that's no longer in your denominator or your fraction, right? So what you have there is dried material. So you're going to be getting a lot more from a lot less material as opposed to the fresh frozen extraction, which again, there's just a lot of water weight in the extractor. It's not water now because we're doing cryogenic extraction at very low temperatures. All that water is frozen as ice, which is one of the reasons why you need to do live resin extractions at such a low temperature. Because if you do it at a higher temperature, you start extracting that water.
Yeah, and you start losing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
This was a fantastic discussion, you guys. We're gonna keep this train rolling. We got a couple stories left, and we're gonna go into our final commercial. And we're gonna be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
I did. You
All
know,
right.
we lost Wade Laughter. Did you guys know Wade from Hash Church?
Do you want to say something real quick in relation to that? Because we are back right now. Dr. Mark, do you want to give a brief thing before we roll into Jesse?
So the cannabis world lost a true hero this week in Wade Laughter. Wade, you may be more familiar with the Harlequin strain, the House of Harlequin. So it's a high CBD variety that provided relief to sick patients and children and a lot of people who desperately needed cannabis medicine. So raise your dab rig or your joint or your bowl or whatever you're smoking and blow some smoke toward the Vatican for Wade Laughter, guy who really made living here on earth a better place through all his generosity and everything he did. He was such a kind soul. If you need to know more about Wade Laughter, go look at some old Hash Churches. He's up there. He's one of the guys that was on the panels all the time.
Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Jen. You want to introduce Jesse?
Yeah, I do. All right. So coming up next, we have the proud husband to Gwen, Grandpa, follically challenged Ginger, and head honcho at Barney Design Co. Also a cannabis vet, whether Dick Bradley thinks so or not. Coming up next, Jesse Barty.
That was awesome. That is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That was a
all
great
right,
intro. I'll just
that
acknowledge.
was a fabulous intro. That was the best one yet. Follically challenged is my
Yeah.
favorite. My favorite euphemism I've ever heard to date. I've never heard that one. That's good. I am a follically challenged ginger. Turning slowly white as it happens. I'm going.
You've
super
always been
white.
white, Jesse.
No, my hair. I mean, it's turning like white. Anyways, I have a cool story about psilocybin, as I love to follow the psychedelics over here on High at 9. Johns Hopkins University is launching a groundbreaking clinical trial exploring whether psilocybin-assisted therapy can help stroke survivors regain motor function even years after their injury. The study is a part of a new agreement between Johns Hopkins and Rose Hill Life Sciences, a company that holds exclusive rights to intellectual property surrounding psilocybin-based treatments for neurological damage. The phase 1 trial will examine whether combining psilocybin with digitally guided physical therapy can reopen the brain's neuroplasticity window, allowing for meaningful recovery in patients with acute, subacute, or chronic brain injuries. The trial will be led by Dr. Gules Dolan, Steve Zeiler, and John Krakauer, who believe that the approach could dramatically change the way doctors treat long-term stroke-related disabilities. The licensed invention includes therapeutic methods for improving motor function and treating focal diascasis, where one part of the brain stops working due to damage in another region. Dr. Dolan, also a professor at UC Berkeley and an adjunct professor at Johns Hopkins, said in a statement that psychedelics may reopen critical periods of brain development. If harnessed correctly, this reopened window of brain malleability could revolutionize stroke rehabilitation, she said. Rose Hill Life Sciences, the world's first legal exporter of psilocybin, says it remains committed to advancing psychedelic research through collaborations in Jamaica, the US, and Canada. The company's partnership with Johns Hopkins marks a major step forward in exploring how psychedelics might one day reshape neurological care. That was out of the Marijuana Herald. These stories keep popping up. I'm really excited about them. For one, we all know people who have neurological problems of all kinds, and it's showing more and more and more, especially with psilocybin and some other psychedelics, that there are massive changes to the brain that improve the growth of the brain, reconnecting areas that have been broken, all kinds of neuroplasticity improvements, growing new neural pathways where they were dead before. There's just all kinds of amazing stuff happening with psychedelics. I've seen these things anecdotally. I've had experiences where people seemed kind of brain dead and they have a great psychedelic experience and they kind of come alive. And it's cool to see these things actually come out in science. I do have one thing to note. I think it's odd that a company can hold exclusive rights to the intellectual property surrounding psilocybin-based treatment for neurological damage. That sounds like something I'm not really super excited about, and maybe Dr. Mark can jump in on nuance of that. But it seems like something that should be more open source and something that should be more open to the public and that people should be able to have access to. But I'm not sure that their intellectual property is actually restricting that. So yeah, that's what I have to say, and I'll toss it back to my fellow correspondents. What's up?
You want to start on this, Dr. Mark?
Yeah. So what to say about that? So patents are only as good as they will hold up in an infringement case against them, right? So, okay, so what are they going to do? They're going to claim that mushrooms, which people have been taking for thousands of years, have some remarkable new, quote unquote, new finding or new property. I mean, good luck trying to enforce that, right? I mean, how do you enforce that IP? It's one thing if you have like a Doritos logo, right? You see that someone is making some Doritos knockoff packaging, and you could convince a court of law to say, look, they're violating that's a trademark, not a patent. But it's kind of similar to that. The patent would be, could other companies make claims on a mushroom? Because the compounds in mushrooms are known, right? Unless they're making new compounds, that's a completely different thing. It sounds like what they've done is they've basically either come up with a finding, a utility patent that says, mushrooms can be used to treat PTSD or depression associated with, cancer or whatever. I'm familiar with the work at Hopkins of a guy named Albert Garcia Ramu, who I think is one of the lead investigators there at the Hopkins group, looking at psychedelic assisted therapy for a number of different applications. And yeah, these companies basically have to convince themselves that somehow they've come up with something novel and something new, when just like with weed, it's just the same old shit. How are you going to patent weed? How are you going to patent mushrooms? Oh, really? You're going to patent we add some other ingredient to mushrooms and that makes some synergistic thing happen? Maybe that happens. And maybe, again, there could be a formulation patent about what makes the mushroom extract more efficacious or more targeted, or, in some cases, like with cannabis, they want to use cannabinoid medicines, but they don't necessarily want the psychoactive effect. So again, you could formulate it or do something to maybe counteract the psychoactive effect and really benefit from the medicinal effect. And that combination could be patented. But ultimately, what I think the question that you're asking, what you're going after is, can the medicinal properties, well-known medicinal properties that have been established for centuries, psychedelic mushrooms, be somehow some company's proprietary IP?
Well, I mean,
Bullshit.
it seems also like from the story, like John Hopkins wouldn't have been able to do research without making a deal with Rose Hill Life Sciences.
Well, and you got to remember, so these companies are basically, trying to raise capital. They got to be able to tell their investors that, we're doing something new. Maybe they are doing something new. Maybe it's some kind of newfangled extraction or newfangled. But when it comes down to it, the molecule psilocybin is a public composition, just like THC, just like CBD. Right. You can't just say, I'm going to take psilocybin, put it into a starch pill, we're going to bring it into clinical trials, without basically spending a lot of money and proving to the world what we already know about mushrooms, which is that psilocybin's got all these great effects. Now, again,
so
maybe they're finding
even making this deal is like a PR stunt for them to try to prove their IP.
Yeah, kind of like that. But I should say that there's other companies who are actually investigating new molecules. So what I do, I'm a synthetic chemist, right? And again, I'm working in the cannabinoid space. But what we do to make new compounds is we take the existing molecules like CBD and THC, and then we do synthetic chemistry to make completely brand new molecules that have never been made before. Those brand new molecules might have good activity, they may not. But if they have good activity and they're brand new, you could patent that.
So
you could patent that because it's not necessarily obvious to one suitably skilled in the art that you can take these molecules, make structural manipulations to the molecules themselves, and still maintain the activity. So it is the aha moment of an invention that you'd want to patent if, again, you'd be teaching the rest of the world, including commercial enterprises like Big Pharma. People always want to know, why did I patent HHCA? Why did I patent this molecule? I patented it so Big Pharma couldn't, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's always reasons to file patents and get IP, and the best IP is like the secret to Coca-Cola recipe, right? So if you look at a can of Coca-Cola, there's 6 ingredients on there. Let's see if I can name them all. Carbonated water, sugar, actually high fructose corn syrup, caffeine, phosphoric acid, caramel coloring, and natural flavors. I think that's it. It's right there, printed right on the can of Coca-Cola, right? So why doesn't everybody just rip off Coca? You can just read the thing right off Coke. I can just make Coca-Cola. The whole thing is, in order to make that can taste exactly like Coca-Cola, you need the recipe. The recipe you won't find in a patent, you won't find in a publication. It's a trade secret. A lot of the things in cannabis and the cannabis industry and the psychedelics industry should be treated as IP that are trade secrets, which is that you only tell people that really, really need to know, right? And think about Coca-Cola. I mean, again, those 6 ingredients, you have a billion-dollar company that's basically the most widely drink across the planet, yet they have the list of ingredients on every can, you know? It's like, so the trade secret is again, probably what they ought to be talking about, which is, well, they shouldn't be talking about it, actually, if you think about it. It's a trade secret, right?
Well, they did say there was something about, there was something in the article about this. What did they say exactly? Oh, combining psilocybin with digitally guided physical therapy.
Yeah, what the fuck is that? So,
right. So
maybe
they have some process that they are engaging in with digitally guided physical therapy, which I don't even really know what that means. So I guess that's the IP part.
And maybe it's that combination.
These things.
I mean, does that mean taking mushrooms and going to a show at the Sphere? Because, like, what are you talking about?
Well,
I mean,
so the other thing that the patent people will look at is that obvious? If it's obvious to somebody who's skilled in the art that, oh, if you combine A plus B, you can get C as an outcome, and they just throw it out as being obvious. So
that could be
there's a certain
novel,
kind of art to getting patents and to making sure that what you're doing can be deemed as not obvious.
I love how you said, Dr. Mark, that it's listed as natural ingredients. So that has to include the cocaine terps, correct?
Yes.
I think they took cocaine out of Coca-Cola a long time ago.
Not the terps. They didn't.
Yeah, you didn't know that Coca-Cola's grows a lot of cocaine.
They're the only
the terpenes.
Yeah, they're the only company that's allowed to import coca leaves for the purpose of the production of their.
They don't import it; they grow it in the States.
It's just, they also have an import license, Jesse.
I remember the.
Jason
I remember
is right.
the
If Jason's wrong, refer to rule number 1. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
I remember the television commercial with James Earl Jones, the cola nuts.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Jesse, can you go back to these two doctors' names? Because when I heard these two doctors' names, I was like, this may be a bogus study, but I sometimes the doctors' names on things are just too funny to me.
Well, I don't even know if I'm saying them right. There's 3 of them. Especially the first one, because there's umlauts in his name, one over in his first name over the U and one over the O. Because I'm probably not saying them right because I forget what the umlauts actually do to U's and O's. But Dr. Gould's Dolan, Steve Zeiler, and Dr. John Krakauer. That one.
Yeah, that one. That's the one. I get a kick out of doctors' names sometimes. Dr. Mark, my grandmother, when she was passing, she was in Vermont, and her gynecologists were named Dr. Peck and Dr. Hole. Which, yeah, I found that is hysterically funny as a kid. But nonetheless, we got to roll into this final story real quick. This is fantastic, Dr. Mark and Jesse. Thank you so much for all of that. And with enough signatures, you guys, I told you we were going to land on a happy note story. With enough signatures, marijuana amendment will be reviewed by the Florida Supreme Court, you guys. That's right. A ballot initiative to permit adult use marijuana for adults in Florida obtained enough signatures this week to trigger a legally mandated financial and judicial review. Smart and Safe Florida, the group sponsoring the constitutional amendment, garnered more than 377,000 signatures verified by local election supervisors, according to the State Division of Elections website. This surpasses a threshold of 220,000 signatures for the state required review. Attorney General James Altenheimer must now transmit the language to be reviewed by the Florida Supreme Court, which must find clear single-subject language in the proposed ballot text. The initiative allows adults 21 years or older to possess, purchase, or use marijuana for non-medical purposes, and also prohibits marketing towards children and smoking or vaping in public. The language is slightly different from a marijuana initiative last year that garnered about 56% support from Florida voters, falling short of the state's 60% threshold needed for passage, and it initially did not specify any prohibitions for marketing toward children or public use of marijuana. And in addition to its multiple hurdles to become a proposed amendment on the 2026 midterm ballot, Smart and Safe Florida is arguing with a new state law on the ballot petition is infringing on First Amendment rights. The organization filed an emergency motion to a federal judge on May 30th, saying the state's new prohibition on non-resident petition circulators has injured the organization's number of people to carry their message to the public. The law, signed promptly by Governor Ron DeSantis, increased restrictions and potential penalties to groups seeking to propose a ballot initiative, and one such restriction is by limiting each voter to only collect 25 petitions, which Smart and Safe Florida argued in their motion already has limited the capacity of their volunteer network. In their motion, the organization said that the state's law non-resident provision is very likely the difference between the amendment getting on the ballot or not. The marijuana amendment's downfall was a shocking result in the November elections. It wasn't that shocking. It was a bad bill, since many surveys found enough support from Floridians for it to pass, and it was also among the most expensive ballot measure campaigns in the country. Yet the campaign against it, spearheaded by Governor DeSantis and other state leaders, included months spent arguing its passage would have deep implications for the state's tourism. DeSantis said at the time that Florida residents would smell a weed stench in the air, and he said the proposal's purpose was mainly to benefit large marijuana companies seeking profits. Well, that's 100% true. More recently, the money to defeat the marijuana initiative was called into question by House lawmakers who investigated the foundation behind First Lady Casey DeSantis' signature initiative, Hope Florida, and lawmakers accused the fundraising arm of that program of improperly funneling part of $67 million Medicaid contractor settlement to the political committee that targeted the ballot amendment headed by Altenheimer, the governor's then chief of staff. Well, that all turned out to be true, too, and there's other stories that we've covered here on High at 9 News in relation to that, and I can't wait to hear what you guys got to say this. Florida looks like you may just have another ballot on the midterms. I can't wait to watch this. Oh, man, I'm popping my popcorn. What do you got to say?
It's this is long overdue. Florida's done this and shown that their population wants cannabis multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
And here we go again. And are they going to actually listen to the people, or are they going to shove it right back in their face like they have?
Yep.
The pattern says it's not good, but hopefully it gets overturned. Meaning what the legislators have been doing and what the governor is, they get overturned by the
people. Yep. Fair enough. Any thoughts on this, Dr. Mark or Jenny Beth?
Get it together, Florida.
All right. Any thoughts, Dr. Mark?
No, I'm good.
All right, fair enough. Well, good luck, Florida. We'll see what happens and see what they end up saying about this. But at the same time, you guys do need to put a home grow amendment on the ballot, I think, if you ultimately want this to be successful. But thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to CloudMedia.Partners Anthony out there in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.
Yeah, we are.
And we're off.
Record.